All right. Hello, everybody. Okay, I think that's on and running. So I'm going to switch over to, if you look at the meeting document, scroll down to topics. You'll see the word topics, and right below it, it says link to topic notes. And I might be able to cut and paste and put this right into the chat also. Yeah, I see some of you down there on it. So let me put this into the chat. This, you guys can go straight to this, and it will have an outline of what we're going to talk about tonight. Sometimes we run a PowerPoint presentation, and sometimes we do a little bit more shorthand. Okay, so if you click on that document, and within that document are some other documents I'm going to bring up through the presentation, and we're going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to try to bring up some documents, and Paul, our guest, is going to talk through them. So before you start, Paul, let me try my hand at an introduction here. Okay. So, and I'll do my best, and you're welcome to run back through this because you know this a lot better than me. But Paul was a fireman and an EMT in St. Louis, Missouri, his hometown, for 17 years. His wife, Laurie, is on the call and was a director of IT for Sutter Health for 10 years and invested all of these years. Paul had a real estate license and invested in real estate during his off time from being a firefighter. Paul was a guest speaker on the Oprah show, and at the bottom of this document, there's a link to that. Later, you can go back and watch that. That's very interesting and entertaining. And the guest speaker on that call was Robert Kiyosaki. And I think it's from that interaction, Paul, where you met Robert and you went on to become, have him as one of your personal mentors in your life and career. And then additionally, Paul has done a joint venture with a builder in St. Louis where they built 7 subdivisions. And Paul and Laurie have built condos in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. I think you said you've done a couple, 3 of those projects, and I'm not totally sure about that one. So with that introduction, you're welcome to go back through and correct anything I missed / didn't state correctly. Okay, Paul? So with that, I'm going to introduce Paul, and he's going to run through a very interesting senior living project that he's been working on and might present for us an opportunity to raise in exchange for GP on the project. Okay. All right, Paul, go ahead. Take it away.
Well, thanks, everybody. It's good to meet everybody. George Knowlton, who's on the line, has been texting me. He actually lives here in Roseville, California, where Laurie and I live. So it's funny that all of us are on this call nationwide, and here's this one of the guys on the call with us right now is in our backyard here. So him and I are going to hook up next week. Like Max said, I'm 58 years old, grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, fireman, EMT, 17 years. I had a lot of time off, got my real estate broker's license, invested in a lot of single families, buy and hold, buy and flip, started coaching some of the firemen on how to do it. I was blessed that I was a guest speaker on the Oprah show in the year 2000 with Robert Kiyosaki, and we were on there talking about building wealth through business and real estate. And then after the Oprah show from 2001 to about 2004, Robert would have me speak at his wealth building events or some of his business associates then too. And at one of those events, I was speaking in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, met a young lady, fell in love, and that's my wife, Laurie, who's on the call with us tonight too. She lived in Sacramento. I didn't want to move to crazy California. She didn't want to go to St. Louis, Missouri. We dated back and forth for a year. She won out, and I moved out here about 13 years ago. And through the years, like Max said, I had teamed up with a builder and built 7 subdivisions in St. Louis. So anybody that's looking to get in ground-up development, I'd be more than happy to tell you all the wins that we had there and all the mistakes that we made then too. And then my wife and I had raised capital, and we'd built condos down in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. So we've been going down there for about 15 years. The talk tonight really is going to be about senior living. And my question right now, how many of you know anything about senior living or have ever had a loved one that had to go into assisted living or memory care? Show of hands. Okay. I didn't know anything about that world 3 years ago, other than at the firehouse when we would get a call and go to a senior living development, somebody had fallen or something like that. That's really the only world I knew about there. And about 3 years ago, a young lady that I go to church with that's in real estate, I saw her one day after church, and she said, I said, what have you been up to? And she said, I bought a single family house, 2,500 square feet, and made it a 6-bed assisted living home. And I said, well, tell me more about that. It was $25,000 a month income, $15,000 a month expenses. She was netting $10,000 a month off of one house. Now, I don't know how many of you have read Rich Dad Poor Dad or Cash Flow Quadrant, but Robert's also got a board game called Cash Flow. And when I bought that board game 20 years ago, it was $200. It's still an $85 game. But literally, I've hosted a cash flow board game night the last Friday night of the month for the last 20 years. I started out just having some of my friends come over and we drink beers and play the game. And through the years, it's been a way for me to give financial education to a lot of people, done a lot of great joint ventures from that, and met a lot of great people through that board game. So if you haven't played it, I'd encourage you to get it and start hosting a cash flow board game night one night a month in your area, and start inviting investors over, business owners, doctors, professionals like that. Great way to network and raise capital. And so she told me about this business model, and I started doing research. There's a couple of guys out there that teach assisted living. So I went to both of their classes about 2.5 years ago. And then I started doing research on assisted living, memory care. And I found these guys in Tucson, Arizona about 2.5 years ago. And they said, Paul, that's a good business model, buying a single family house, converted it to 6 beds, not 6 bedrooms, but 6 beds, 25,000 income, 15,000 expenses, 10 net. But down in Tucson, they said that that's kind of a mom and pop business. And what they like to do down there is they buy ground, they get it through zoning, they build a 6,000 square foot single level house. You walk in, big living area, big kitchen, 10 bedrooms in a horseshoe shape, but they like to build 10 of those houses on a cul-de-sac. So it's a small house feel, but it's got economies of scales of 100 beds. And so when they said that, it was just like the cash flow game. The young lady that I know here, her single family 6-bed house making $10,000 a month net, that was a big deal for the cash flow game. But then once I talked to the Tucson boys, her deal went to a small deal and theirs went to the big deal. And so my wife and I flew down to Tucson, met with 2 business partners down there for a couple of days. We flew them to Sacramento, California. We flew them to St. Louis, Missouri, where I know everybody. And we're going to pass on California right now because the politics are a little crazy out here. And where I live in a suburb of Sacramento, it's called Roseville, very nice area. But I call it, there's a lot of apartment style senior living that are on the books to be built or that have just opened or that have been here for a little while. So it might be getting a little too saturated for here. In St. Louis, we bought 6 acres of ground or 10 acres of ground, and the 10 acres looks like a high school football stadium. And anybody that's on this call, that if you can think of a nice area where you live at, and you can get 5 acres, we could probably duplicate this business model. On the 10 acres, the football field is going to be 5 single level houses that are 8,000 square feet each. You walk in the front door, it's a big living room, big kitchen, 12 bedrooms in a horseshoe shape. 4 of those rooms will be a little bit bigger so we can double up, so we can have 16 people per house. So we call that phase 1, the football field. 5 houses, 16 people per house. On that, 3 of the houses will go with memory care. 2 of the houses will do as assisted living. That phase 1 is about a $10 million project for the ground, the infrastructure, the build out of the 5 houses, the furnishings and everything's $10 million. We've got a local bank in St. Louis that if we put $2.5 million, call it 2.7 down, they'll fund the whole project for us. We had a doctor lined up that was going to put the 2.5 down and co-sign on the note with us and our business partners out of Tucson. Unfortunately, about 30 days ago, he notified us, let us know that he had some personal problems. He won't be able to go forward with the deal. So that's part of the opportunity we're going to be talking about tonight. So if you ever want to talk about buying a single family house, 6-bed, $10,000 a month net, I can talk to you about that. I'm very fluent in that. If you want to talk about a bigger deal, either in your backyard or a location in the country that you're thinking about doing it, I'll let you pick my brain on everything that I know. Max and I had talked about tonight that I'm going to show you. He's got a picture of it. Max, can you put that picture up? I don't know if you can see this. Max, can you show that picture of the site? Well, while he's doing it,
I'm working at it here, but it's lagging on me. So I'm working on a couple documents here. One will be I want to show the if I can scroll to the bottom of this, but see, it's loading slow. I think it's because I've got
what Max and I talked about was really working with the whole Geek squad here and possibly taken one house, and we'll just take one house and raise 2.2 million. We'll buy it and we'll pay for it cash. And with that, on 2.2 million cash, that'll throw off a very, very nice positive cash flow. And so what Max and I talked about was getting a gauge of interest that we could get information out to you guys. And I'm not one to go to somebody and ask them to invest in a project. I believe in going to people and ask them for their opinion of a project. Because if you ask their opinion, they're going to tell you good, bad, otherwise about that project. The ones that see something there for themselves, or they might have a family member or friend that might be interested, they're going to volunteer that information. They're going to say, hey, you got to talk to my dad, or you got to talk to my sister. She'd be interested in this project here. Because it gets a little awkward if you go to somebody and say, hey, would you invest in this project or invest in my project? And they tell you no. Then to go back to them a second time, it gets a little bit awkward. So I say to people, ask people's opinions of this, because then you can take the next deal, the next deal, the next deal, whether it's your deal or whether it's a deal that you're joint venturing on in too. This picture that Max has got here is the 10-acre site. The green pond to the right is the detention pond. On that football field, we call that phase 1. The street that you see in there is about the size of a high school track. And then those other buildings are actually duplexes. Those are five-plexes and a 3-plex. That's phase 2. That'll be for independent living there. So an elderly person living in the area can move into one of our duplex doors, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-car garage on slab, rents for about $2,500 a month. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage rents for about $3,500 a month. And as they age in place on our campus, they can then move across the street to one of the 8,000 square foot, what we call cottages on that football field. Those are about starting price $4,000 a month for assisted living. You're at about $6,000 a month for memory care, depending on the person's needs. So the football field is a $10 million build out. But we talked to Max about taking just one house and starting with the team here, raising capital of $2.2 million. That way we just build it out for cash, cash flow the property. In year 4 or 5, either sell the property off or refinance it to a HUD permanent 40-year loan and take the investors out. That's the actually inside of the unit, what it looks like.
I want to see if this last page will load.
Yeah, most of the time what you see with senior living is apartment style. And everybody here is very, very familiar with apartments. This is really just a little spin on the apartment style that we've got 80 beds on that football field. Call it 80 beds, an 80-unit apartment complex is basically the same thing. Walk in the front door, it's a big living area, big kitchen. You see how it's a horseshoe-shaped building. We've got a family room in there for when the families come and hang out with the people. 4 of the rooms are doubles. We've got the utility room. Very, very nice setup. And once again, this business model can be dropped in anywhere in the country that's a nice area. Max, what else should I be talking about, young man?
Okay, so let's see how we're doing here. I think you mentioned it, but in the document,
talking about is everybody on the call here. Number one, you're going to get educated on senior living. Even though your focus might be apartments, this will give you another conversation to be having. And there's a big need. I mean, we're all getting older. There's what I want. Yeah, that's what the outside of the house looks like there. That's a St. Louis style. If we were building in Tucson, it's got more of a Santa Fe style. But down in St. Louis, that's what the look will be on it.
Interesting.
Max was talking about, what would something like this look like? And so let's say that somebody on the call wanted to go out and talk to your brother, your uncle, your friend, or it's in your own bank account. If we're going to raise $2.2 million, let's just call it $2 million for now. If you brought $1 million to the table, you bring the investors to the table with $1 million, there's 3% equity sitting in the deal for the $2 million. You would actually get half of that. You would get 1.5% equity in the deal on this project here. And then your investor would get it's about a 17% annualized return on this deal then too, over a 5-year period. Our game plan is to build it, fill it, stabilize it, and then sell it off. So instead of doing all 5 houses for the $10 million, Max was saying, why don't we go to the team and let's just do one of the houses together, which is fine with us then too. If you've got somebody that's got the deep pockets that wants to take down the whole site, we could knock it all out at one time then too.
Yeah, so you're describing these inner buildings. Those are the ones that are this large house format here. How many square foot? 8,000 square feet?
8,000 square feet. So think about the apartment that you rent or the house that you live in, the square footage, and this is 8,000. It kind of gives you a scale on how big this is.
And here's the front door here. So this is a plan view. Okay, it looks like okay. Here we go. This is the plan view. Walking in through that front door. Here's the horseshoe shape. Bedrooms around the outside. How many bedrooms? A dozen?
There's 12 bedrooms. 4 of those bedrooms are a little bit bigger, so we can double up in those rooms. So we'll have 16 people per building, which still keeps it nice and small and very intimate, versus an apartment where apartment style senior living, it might be a 3-story apartment. Mom might be on the 3rd floor, 19 doors down the hall. How much attention is she really getting? I'm not knocking them. There's a lot of great places out there like that. It's just our Tucson guys have been doing this 16 years. So I just fell into their business model, and this is what I'm following.
Okay.
We're going to build the football field for $10 million. And then year 5 or 6, we'll sell that off for $18 million. There's about an $8 million profit in that. How do I know those numbers? Because the Tucson partners have been doing this 16 years. They've built 3 developments down there, filled them up, stabilized them, sold them off. And when they sell them off to the investor, they stay in on the management side for the investor then too. So that's how we know our numbers for St. Louis.
You got a hand raised from George.
Yeah, the Tucson boys are getting 20% ownership of this. My wife and I have 30% ownership, and we've got the rest out there for investors and people like the geeks on the meeting here. Go ahead, George.
Paul, my question is about the with multifamily, we're managing just property managers, not a lot of liability on that side. How do you manage the nursing staff? How is that managed on a property like this in comparison to a regular property management?
Great question. Number 1, we have very good insurance policies to cover anything that might happen. Number 2, what they call it is an executive director. So when we start hiring for our staff at this site, there will be one executive director that really manages the whole site. The Tucson boys partners and their team will come up, do all the hiring, all the training for our St. Louis development then too. So the executive director manages the whole site. There'll be a one registered nurse for the site, and it takes about 40 workers to run an operation like this. But from a liability standpoint or a hassle standpoint, it's really the executive director's role to make sure that everything's moving smoothly.
Okay, thank you.
And down at the
so I want to back up for 1 second. For all of us, let's say there's 20 of us on this Zoom call right now or Google call. The 20 of us could figure out how to buy the ground and build it out. We wouldn't have a problem with that. But I'm telling you, even after 3 years of studying this, the 20 of us would be sucking wind trying to figure out how to manage this. That's the key to the joint venture with the Tucson business partners. I'm bringing them in, no money out of their pocket. They're going to co-sign on the loan because all the banks want somebody with experience. But that's the beauty of them being here because they've been doing it so long. If it was me trying to figure this out, I would pass on this deal because I don't need the learning curve of how to manage and operate a place like this.
Okay, and then at the bottom of the form, you guys, that you have the link to in the chat, there's a business plan, and you're going to be able to open it more easily than me. It seems like my internet load is allowing me to open things. Open that business plan and scroll to the bottom. You can see the Tucson, I call them the Tucson experts, and Paul calls them the Tucson boys. They're the ones who have done, how many of these have they done in the past, Paul?
They've done 3 developments in Tucson, and when I caught them 2.5 years ago, they were looking to expand out. They joint ventured with a guy in Tallahassee, Florida, that they're building a 9-house project there, and the first 2 houses are up and running and full already. And they teamed up with us for St. Louis, doing 5 houses. And the reason we went 5 houses is that's all we could fit on that football field. That piece of ground that we've got, it was already had the sewers and streets in. We picked that 10 acres up. You California people are going to love this. New York people are going to love it too. We picked up 10 acres, sewers and streets in for $450,000.
Okay.
It's
and
appraised
now-
out. It's appraised out as is at 1.2 million right now.
Okay. Very exciting. All right. Now Tyler's got his hand up, and I'm going to introduce him slightly before he speaks, if you don't mind, Tyler. Tyler and his team bought a couple of these homes, and if I got this wrong, you'll correct me. Okay, Tyler, a couple of these homes in Colorado, and have since gone through, I would call it a management learning curve of the properties. And Tyler has been sort of the key guy in that process. So with that brief introduction, Tyler, talk to us about what your questions are.
Hey, Paul, it's pretty immaculate timing here, for you to be presenting on my first time here with the group. As Max had mentioned.
Hey, Tyler, let me cut
yeah.
you short 1 second. Tyler, can you give us a little more background? Did you buy the 6-bed, 8-bed homes? Did you buy the bigger ones like this? Give us a little bit of background how you got involved with this, and then bring us up to speed to the question.
Absolutely. So in June, very beginning of June, we closed. It was a $2.1 million deal. 2 single-family homes that were converted about 12 years ago by the previous owner into 10 beds each. So a total of 20 residents. Our beds are all single room, which is very nice to offer, as I'm sure you know by now.
What part of Colorado?
This is in Denver, specifically
Okay.
Aurora.
Yes.
So easy access to the airport, which is very nice for friends and family that are, wanting to visit their loved ones.
Our Tucson boys were looking in Aurora, but then they saw too many big box apartment styles kind of going on right there.
The development in Aurora right now is incredible. A lot going on right there. So I'm sure acquiring the 10 acres or whatever land you were looking to get would be pretty challenging. But so in June, to give you, a full summary here, we took over. I had absolutely no experience whatsoever. We were told, and this is about a 6-month process. We were in escrow for, I think, about 5 months. So there was a pretty steep learning curve, but I had enough time to be able to talk to the people I needed to try and find out, enough information. The night before I signed, I found out that 3 of our 4 staff members were quitting. Among other issues, we had bed bug problems. There was just a whole list of things that seemingly went wrong in the first, couple of months. And really it started before we even fully took over. So I can speak to the fact that it's a challenging business model. It's very hands-on, and the key, as you mentioned, is having the business partner that is able, qualified, and experienced to run the operation. I completely believe 150% in the business model, and I feel fortunate enough to be able to have, had some hands-on experience to this point. At this point, but I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Where we might have gone wrong, we bought a pre-existing business model that is profitable, but I can't imagine how much better it would have been had we had the ability to build it from the ground up.
Did you buy those 2 10-bedroom homes for $2.1 million total?
Yeah, and out of that $2.1 million, a portion was put towards the business assets. So we bought not only the homes, but the business as well. And
you did an SBA loan on it?
Correct, yeah.
And those beds rent for about $3,500 there in Aurora?
No, not quite. We're about 85% Medicaid funded. We have a couple residents that pay private pay out of pocket. Medicaid reimbursement rates right now are about $2,900 a person, give or take.
Okay. Yeah, that's not bad. Once with our Tucson guys, they've always been private pay. They've never gone the government route. But saying that, they did take one of their houses, one of their 10-bed houses, and they went with I want to say, and I'm not politically correct, developmental disability program. The state had a need to put some people somewhere, and they tested it with them, and it went very well. And they actually get paid more than what they would for the assisted living. And the staffing, it's not as hard as work. It's a different kind of work, but there's definitely a huge need for that out there. They've actually taken 3 of their houses and went that route then too. That football field that we've got, we're slating 3 for memory care, 2 for assisted living on that football field. We might take one of those and go with the developmental disability program, the 2 on that there.
Now, when you say disability, is this physical disability or some sort of mental?
Usually it's going to be some kind of a brain kind of a problem.
Okay. So yeah, some degree of cognitive impairment. I
Yes.
definitely have a lot of experience with that. Almost all of our residents are younger. Our average age is 40 to 60, 65 or so.
Yes.
And pretty much all of our residents have some degree of cognitive impairment.
And so did you get everything turned around there and it's going pretty smoothly now? So where do you live? Do you live in Aurora?
No, I'm overseeing the project from LA actually.
Okay.
I've been to Denver once or twice a month the last 4 or 5 months. So I've made many trips out there to oversee things.
Do you have a good house? Do you have a good house manager now that's running the 2 houses?
As of a couple weeks ago.
Okay, excellent. That's the key right there.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So,
What
to summarize,
so you probably had to put 20% down on the business, 20% down on the house, 10% down on the business with the SBA.
No, actually, we were able to get 90% leverage, so we only had to come up with 10% of that 2.1.
And what's the positive cash flow on paper?
Well, before and after purchase are two different things. On paper, we were looking at about 680 total that we were bringing in per year, with roughly 520 in overhead costs. So I don't have the numbers in front of me. I wish I could be a little bit more
So
specific.
about 160,000 positive cash flow?
Yeah, roughly. And then out of that, we were also paying a lease payment from the business to the property holding LLCs. So I believe there's an extra 90K or so in lease payments that are added onto that to roughly 250K in total NOI.
Yeah. What could you have done different? Is there anything that, looking back now, obviously there's not probably a whole lot that you could have done due diligence wise not to have seen, bed bugs. I mean, it is what it is.
Valuable business learning lesson here. Anytime you're taking over any business of any kind, have one-on-one meetings. Make sure that you know what is going on below the surface. Talk to your employees one-on-one. Don't necessarily just listen to whoever is currently presiding over the operation. That was, a huge learning lesson. For me, I'm only 25, so every step of the way here has been an incredible opportunity to learn. Circling back though, I don't want to take this whole time talking about myself. Circling back, I love what you guys have going on. My business partner is also my dad. He's in healthcare as well. He has a pretty good idea of where the market is going in this asset type, and so I'd love to follow up with you another time if that's okay with him on the line.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him. And once again, the small house model of the 6-bed, 8-bed, 10-bed is a great business model. Anybody on the Zoom here, on the Google here, you could really run that. I would suggest if you're going to do it, there's some classes that go on, or give me a call. We could talk extensively about it. But you can actually mix it into the portfolio of whatever you're doing now, if I believe you joint venture with a healthcare professional. And I'm going to say just a nurse. You find a nurse that's tired of what they're doing, or that works per diem, that's got great credit, they've got the down payment for a deal like this. You study this kind of business model, bring that to them, joint venture with them. In California, as the administrator, you have to spend 20 hours a week there. So if you had them be the administrator and the business partner, I'm not going to say it's passive for you, but I think a healthcare professional wanting a change in their life be a good way to go, because on a 6-bed, if there is $10,000 a month net, and there really should be, and you took 5 and the healthcare professional got 5, that's a win-win right there.
Absolutely.
That's St. Louis, Missouri. That's downtown St. Louis right there. Population about 3 million people.
Where's my mute? Darnell is raising his hand. Go ahead, Darnell.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Paul, could you talk about some of the pros and cons between building a senior community from the ground up versus finding property as Tyler was just explaining and actually converting? What are the pros and cons with that?
Great question. So on the small house model, let's say it's a 6-bed, 8-bed, 10-bed. Tyler, on your 10-bed, do you know the square footage on that by chance?
Yeah, it's roughly 4,200 square feet.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So if the nice thing, Darnell, is that every state that we're all in, you'll have a list of every licensed assisted living, memory care, nursing facility out there. And let's say that you lived in the city I live in, Roseville, California. Got 3 zip codes here, probably a population of about 70,000 people. I could find out how many small house, single family homes are here that are up and running. And I can make a call to each one of them, letting them know, hey, I don't have anybody for you. I'm doing some research. Are you taking more clients? Can you tell me about your place? And have a list of about 10 questions you want to ask them. And one of those questions would be, do you have any plans to sell, or do you have any plans to open up another one? And so when you're doing your market research here, you'll be able to see and hear from the 20 or 30 people that are already operating in your area, whether it's your city or you go out with an hour's drive time from where you're at. That market study right there of talking to the people that are already up and running, what's the good, the bad, the ugly of it? How full do you keep? What are your price points? What bank do you work with? Have you ever thought about expanding out and joint venturing with somebody? Have you ever thought about selling your place? And that right there will give you the numbers and what's possible. On that, probably everybody on this call, anywhere in the country, you could build a 4,000 square foot house. You could probably pick up a piece of ground. Hopefully that's an improved lot. My definition of that is the sewers and streets are already there. So you buy the improved lot, let's just say for $100,000, pretty much you can build for $150 a square foot anywhere in the country. And so on a 4,000 square foot house, that'd be $600,000 build price, $100,000 for your lot. You're into it for $700,000. You're going to get about $3,500 a month rent per bed. Let's just call it $4,000 if you're in a decent area. So that's it's $40,000 a month coming in versus your note on that place and your staffing. So on that, it should be about on a 10-bedroom house, it should be about $15,000 to $18,000 a month positive cash flow, with you being the administrator 20 hours a week, or you have a business partner that is the administrator, and them overseeing a staff of about 3 or 4 people there. So I can see you doing either way. I think a novice getting into it, I'd rather see him do some studying. Definitely talk to me. I can refer you to some people that have schooling on this too, or you can fly out here and I'll school you. But I'd rather see you probably, not knowing anybody's situation, buy one that's existing, tweak it, and upgrade it. And because you got cash flow coming in day one versus starting fresh, that you just take a house and convert it. It might take you 3 months, 6 months to get that done through the state and everything like that, versus building a house and going through that process. Because I think buying one that's existing already, that the owner's tired. That's what we're looking for, is a tired owner. We can go in and clean that place up, get it looking real nice, but we're looking for a tired owner, and get in there, do it for a year. And 1 year into it, you're going to say, this is not for me. I want out. And then you sell it, and it should be a pretty easy sell because it's an up and running business. Or you say to yourself, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm going to hang on to this one right here and keep going on. Or, yeah, I'm really liking this. I'm going to take a second one. Because I really think that you need to be at 3 houses relatively close to each other, really to maximize the labor force, the purchasing power, and the cash flow. Think about it for a second, that if you've got one house and you teamed up with a healthcare professional, and it's thrown off, let's just say $12,000 a month positive cash flow, you're taking 6, the healthcare professional's taking 6, the healthcare professional's really running it. You get through that first year, healthcare professional says, yeah, I'm good with this. This is good. What would you have to do apartment-wise? How many apartment doors would you have to buy to net $6,000 for your take on the deal? What would the down payments be on those apartments? What would be the headaches on those apartments? Would they be in your backyard? Could you even find something like that? Or would you have to go outside out of where you live at to find those apartments? So it's really a $12,000 a month positive cash flow if you ran it yourself then too, 20 hours a week. So that's how I would weigh those. Or how many single family houses would I have to have at 200 a month positive cash flow or 300 a month positive cash flow. Out here in California, where I live at, you can't touch a house for less than $300,000. That'd be a 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom house, postage size yard, and your rents on that would be about $1,800 a month, just to give you numbers for California. $300,000 purchase price. I'd have to put 20% down, 60 grand down, $1,800 a month rent coming in versus my note going out. And that's going to be an older house that over the next 5 to 10 years, I'll have to be putting a roof on, AC furnace and that kind of stuff there. So my positive cash flow would be, let's just say on a good day, I'll give you $500 a month. On a good day, I'd have to have 10 of those houses, $600,000 down, and deal with those tenants for the $5,000 a month positive cash flow.
Okay, so, and sorry to jump in right there. George has his hand up. Go ahead, George.
I just wanted to throw out one other thing. A few years ago, I rehabbed a couple of these 6-bed units in California. And the reason they're 6 beds is because the laws change after 6 beds. They get a little stricter here in California. I don't know how they are elsewhere, but that's kind of the number here. But the gentleman who had inherited these homes, he inherited them from his parents. His parents were both nurses, and they had ran both homes. But he was a young man when he inherited them. And so what he did was he leased the homes out. We rehabbed them, and then he leased the homes to a nursing company to run all the nursing staff. And then he was only responsible for the maintenance. And I would take it a little step further and do the cleaning as well, because I noticed the nursing staff did not maintain the home the way that me as an asset owner would want it maintained. So I think I would retain that. But I've been working on models centered around that for the last couple of years, because I really think that as far it is burgeoning. And one of the big things that is an appealing thing to this small home scenario is that an older person can move into the home and they never have to leave. Because here in California, a lot of times you start at $3,500 a month, but then if you get incontinent, well, you can't stay in that home anymore. Now you got to go to this other home, and that's $7,000 a month. And it isn't as much the cost, because that's nursing and that. It's the having to move that is so bad for the older people. So I've been working on this model. So I'm excited to hear this is uncanny that it all comes together the way that it comes together. So
yeah, literally, George lives in the same city that I live in. It's Roseville. George, can you find a house for less than $300 grand out here?
You cannot. And there's actually, Paul, there's a spot right here. I was listening to you talk about the Tucson guys came here and we got all these big boxes. And I actually had sent Max a bunch of information on a property right here in Granite Bay that I thought was perfect for exactly this model, because the homes we have 0 lot lines almost. The homes are huge, but they're really too big for where they are. They're too close to the grocery store. They're too close to traffic. No, somebody that's going to build a house like that probably doesn't want to be right there.
Yeah.
But I heard what you said, and I'm like, interesting. So they already figured it out, because
I've seen a lot of these single family homes here in California. You see them in Texas. You see them in Arizona and Florida. I haven't seen any in St. Louis. I know St. Louis like the back of my hand. I found a couple there. So with other states, I'm not really sure how popular it is, but I know it's going to be going everywhere. There's not enough government beds. So who's really screwed is the poor people in the middle class, because they can't afford a private pay model like this. And whatever government beds are out there right now, they're full. And the tsunami of elderly people coming down the pipeline, I don't know where they're all going to go. And the reality is, who's more screwed than that elderly person that needs assisted living or memory care is their family members, because now they're going to have to live with them, or you're going to have to go to their house, and your whole life is altered like you would never believe. It's crazy.
That's right.
Okay, so David's got his hand up. Go ahead, David.
Hey, Paul. So what I would like to know is, as far as returns for the investors, when will it start cash flowing where they'll see a return? And then is it for strictly accredited investors, or is it for sophisticated investors as well? And what would those returns somewhat look like?
Great question. We've actually had a private placement memorandum drawn up. And on that there, it would be accredited investors. We could take a couple of non-accredited investors, friends and family, kind of like you guys here. And on that, on the big project, if we built all 5 houses out at one time, we had an 8% a year preferred return. And then when we sell the property off year 5 or 6, because that is our business model to sell it, they would actually get profits on that, which actually brings them to about a 17% a year average return. And David, the investor probably won't get paid till about 12 to 14 months into it, because it's going to take us 12 months to build the unit out. So we'll owe them their money on that 8% return there. We'll catch them up year 2, year 3.
Okay.
So this would be somebody wanting to get a 8% preferred return. It would actually average out about 17% a year. That wants their money, locked up for 5 to 6 years, basically. Now, what Max and I were talking about on one house, a little different, because we would just raise the cash to $2.2 million. The investor would still get 17% return. Let's say, David, you brought the investor to the table with the $2.2 million. You would then get 3% equity ownership in the deal then too. You'd get that cash flow once it starts coming in. And then when we sell this thing off, there's going to be an $8 million profit. So 3% of that would be $240,000 for you. And we'd have to have the attorney redraw this PPM up to make sure that we're all legal and everything's solid for everybody that's involved. So we got a couple of different ways we can go.
Okay.
And we just thought this would be a good project for the geeks that are involved to, go out and learn how to raise capital in a senior living situation, because everybody, every investor I've ever talked to, they get that there's a need for senior living, and that there's money in it. There's big money in it. It's not cheap to live in these places.
Yeah, that's true. And so how long are you planning to hold before you sell?
Year 5 or 6. So it's going to, if we built out all 5 at one time, that's a 12 to 16 month build out. But what's nice about ours versus an apartment style is once we get the building number 1 done, we can start filling as we're finishing out building 2, building 3, building 4. Apartment style, you got to get the 3-story apartment all finished, and before you get your certificate of occupancy to get one person in there. So ours, it's kind of a build and fill as we go model then too. And that's why I think Max had some great ideas today I didn't even think about, of how we could just take the team right here, get the word going to people, and let's do building number 1 and then move right on to building number 2.
Okay. My last question is, so I don't think I've seen like living quarters for like nursing staff. Will they be 24 hours, or are they just come at certain hours? Or
Great question. On the 5 houses, basically you got 2 caretakers for the morning shift for each house, and a roving person that goes all 5. Second shift, 2 people per each house with a rover. Third shift, 1 person per each house, 1 rover. So it's not the staff does not sleep there at all. It's a 3 rotating shift basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, saying that, where the St. Louis project's at, the houses around our St. Louis project, the regular houses go probably anywhere from 100 to 150,000, give or take a few pennies. My game plan with that is to buy 1 or 2 houses. And in this municipality, it's called the city of Florissant, you can only have 4 non-related people renting a house together, which I like that on one hand. Actually, I like it a lot. So my game plan is to pick up a couple of houses, and the 40-person staff, then I'll have them put 4 people to a house as renters in too.
Okay, awesome. We got a couple questions. Cabrin first, and then right after Cabrin, we'll go to Jay.
Hey, Paul. I actually have 2 questions in one. One is pertaining to the pros and cons of if you just did a large long-term care community. I've seen one individual I was listening to, he said that he gets larger communities and breaks them up into smaller sections, basically, so it has a smaller, more residential care home feel, and kind of maximizes it that way. And I was just wondering, kind of like, is there major pros or cons to going with the smaller, 8, 12, 10 to 12 beds, or going with a larger community? And then also, I was curious as to what's the lines with those levels of care that's needed, dependent from the homes that you all are building and developing. Is there a certain point where legally they will have to go to another home, or are you basically capable of accommodating any level of care?
So Cabrin, you were kind of breaking up there, but I think I've got the question. Is the small house model better than the large 200 unit apartment complex? Depends on what your mindset is and where you're at in life. My Tucson partners have always said, we don't want to be in the nursing home business. Too much liability there. Somebody had brought that question up there earlier. Too much liability there. My Tucson partners are assisted living. Memory care is the lane that they want to stay in. And they've done this 10-bed model. They don't mind going to the 16-bed model. They're comfortable there. They are anti-big box apartment style. A lot of money to be made there, but it's just a totally different world, really. And so to answer your other question, when one of our people that has assisted living starts to decline, what happens to them? Usually they'll move on to a nursing home. Now, we all have some limited capabilities in our head, and we're probably losing our memory a little bit each day with the environments that we live in. But what we try to do is keep the person in our house as long as we can until it really comes down to that they definitely need to go to a memory care home. And that's what's nice about our site then too. They can come in independent living in our duplexes, and then as they age in place, they can move across to the football field. Let's call 3 of the houses assisted living, 2 memory care. So to answer your question on that, we'll keep that person in assisted living as long as we can, even if there is some memory problems. But when they go full blown that they need memory care, they just move right next door to the memory care unit then too. And that's it's interesting. Our clients are 85-year-old people, but the buyer are people that do the tours are the 65-year-old kids, which is kind of funny when you think about that. I'm 58, but it's the 65-year-old kids coming to take a look at a site for their parents. And a lot of times in any city around the country that you'll see older churches converted. You'll see older grade schools converted as assisted living memory care kind of a places, because this really wasn't that big of a business 30, 40, 50 years ago. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, my grandma moved into our house and we took care of her, when the time was right. Both of our grandmas kind of did it too. But it really has evolved, and there is a lot of people with a lot of money that can afford these places. And that's our target market. Nice areas, private pay. They pay us top dollar. We pay our staff good. I have it down that with my business partner, I already agreed, I will pay my staff more than the average person in any of our competing buildings and take that out of my profit. I don't need as much profit. I want my staff taken care of with good compensation. And one of the things that I like about it too is I like to be able to sit down with the staff and find out, who are you in life? Where have you been? Where are you at now? You're thinking about coming to work for us. What are your goals? Where do you want to go? And if you're a CNA or an LPN and you want to be a nurse, I want to help you. One of the proudest days of my life would be if a staff member comes there and they want to be a nurse, and over a 2, 3, 4 year period, we can help them get through nursing school and they can move on and get a better paying job. I don't mind that kind of turnover at all.
Okay, let's do one more question with Jay, and then let's try to wrap this up. Okay, go ahead, Jay.
Okay, so how do we go from this conversation to making this reality on our side?
That's a max question. I think number one, I think for you guys to get my number and we set times that I can talk to each one of you guys individually, I'd like to learn about where have you been in life, where are you at right now, where are you headed, so I know what you've got going on. So I might be able to refer. I know a lot of people from the Oprah show. I mean, and being tied with Kiyosaki, I know a lot of people everywhere. And so I'd really like to learn more about each one of you, where you've been, where you're at now, where do you think you want to go, and how would the senior living play tie into you, especially on this first one that we do as a team here on the Capital Race, so we can all get educated on it. But if you see something for yourself that you're thinking about maybe doing a small single family house or like copycat our business model in your backyard or somewhere in the country, I can talk to you about that then too. So, but Max, what would be the next step for all this?
So I'm pasting some questions into the chat, and then there's a link there for a Google form. Here's the kind of questions we were thinking of as we're going down this road. Number one, would this raise interest you? Right? Do you think you can raise in exchange for GP on this project? Does that interest you? Number two, how much do you think you can raise? And I realize you're guessing or taking a shot at it, right? You're just thinking in your mind, if I were raising for this, I think I can raise this much. Number three, would you be willing to talk to your investors about the opportunity to get their opinion and see if they are interested? In other words, would you know enough to start to call up some of your investors that you think have been asking about, going into multifamily or other investments with you, and just talk to them about their interest level? Would they be interested? Next one would be, would you and your investors be willing to meet us in Tucson to meet the Tucson experts? I think that would be an important step. If you've got 2 or 3 or 4 investors that are thinking of putting in X amount of dollars, right? And I think we would go with a minimum of 50 grand for investment, but you would want to have them fly and meet you and us in Tucson and meet the 2 experts who are going to own 20% of this deal. They're a key component to this thing running that we'd like it to run. So that would be an important trip. And then the next thing would be, would you and your investors be willing to meet us in St. Louis? Next thing would be to fly and see that vacant property right now, kind of lay of the land, kind of get familiar with that area, and start to think about, the interest level that you would have / your investors have. And I think what the deal we always try to make with sponsors like Paul is, we want to consider any amount of investment that you bring, whether it's from your investors or from yourself, as that component that allows you to get GP, which is a little bit of a technical statement, but I can explain it later if it's not clear enough. But if you're willing, click on that Google Doc, or it's a Google form actually, click on that and go ahead and answer some of those questions. And then I think, depending on your interest level, I think Tyler should go ahead and set up a call with Paul and, your partner, Tyler, along those lines, because I think that'd be interesting. And I love the idea of doing the first building with a $2 million raise, only because it just seems like such a low risk kind of concept proof opportunity. For $2 million, we get to, if we could raise that amount, there's no bank loan or anything. We're going to go in and start to build and move forward on that one. If it were all fantastic, we can move to the next building, right? If it's all a disaster, we'll know rather quickly before we get down the road, right? So just a proof of concept kind of idea. And an investor is going to do that with us too. All of our investors we've ever had would say, I have $10 million, here's 50,000. That's always the way it worked. Yeah. They wanted to give us 50K for X number of years and sit around and see who we were and see if it was for real. And that's kind of the phase we've been in with a lot of investors. It's the way it works. When you're 10 million, you're not going to just hand over your 10 million to someone. You'll start with 50K and see how they do, right? So,
I think what Max is saying here too, I think what investors will see though too, with inviting them to Tucson, what's nice is Southwest Airlines, you can fly to Tucson on Southwest Airlines anywhere in the country, very, very, very cost effective. Fly in the morning, fly back that night, anywhere. And to actually see and meet Klaus Axon and Bobby Larson, if you look up innovativeseniorliving.com, innovativeseniorliving.com, that's their website. But when you fly down there and actually walk their grounds and see it and see who they are and their staff, your investor's comfort level will go through the roof, guarantee it. And once again, if I'm asking investors, I'm asking them to get their opinion. And then it seems like there's something there, then get them more information. But for them to fly there and see that, and to know that we got 16 years of operations background behind us, that's the key to this whole thing. Without that there, all of us on this call, we can, once again, all of us could figure out how to find that ground, get it through zoning and build it. But to operate it, I don't want that learning curve. Tyler's had just a little bit of that on a 10-bed. That's why the Tucson boys, it's critical. And then once again, even if you haven't bought an apartment complex, teaming up with somebody that has that experience already for an apartment complex, good way to go. Whatever you're going to go into, if you can get a joint venture with somebody that's been doing it many, many years and it's very successfully, I'd give up equity on that deal all day long to do that, which is really what we're doing here. We're giving the Tucson boys 20% of this project. And I've told them I'll give them a piece of the pie on any project I do moving forward, because they've coached me through all the way to this point here. And I know that we'll be successful. I have zero doubt that we will not be successful on the filling it and managing it because of what they've been doing.
Nice. Okay. And I'm so sorry. Part of my job is to interrupt and cut people off. And I apologize for that. It's 6:22 in my time. So we got 8 minutes left. I want you guys to return to the Geek Group weekly document, drop to the bottom there and find the rate and wrap area. And if you're not familiar with this, some of you, but most of you are, okay, drop to that area. Jay, Justin, and Albrey already got numbers in. Type your name and type your rating. Remember, the rating system is 7 and below. You want to make a comment about why you're rating it that. 8 and above, you do not have to make a comment. It's optional. And the reason you want to make a comment if your rating is 7 below, remember, you're not rating the person speaking necessarily, but the overall meeting. The reason you would want to make a comment is because you don't want to leave a meeting with something, you know, bothering you, something that you didn't get to say, or something on your chest. And even though we can't probably address any big items at this point, we can put it on a list and get back to it and work at it, okay? And again, you guys, this is from the Traction book, right? This is where we run our business, and I'd love to see it if Paul would consider that the senior living homes would run on Traction too. I would be tickled pink if that happened. Okay, let's start going through the list as you guys are typing. Jay, what's your rating? And everybody unmute so we can roll through this quickly.
9.
Nice. Justin?
I give it an 8.
Nice. Albrey?
8.
Thank you. David?
I'm a 9. Also, Max, can you send the slides to me for the property package? Because I couldn't access it.
Yep, let me work on that. Okay, Cabrin?
I give it a 9.
Nice. Lucian?
I give this an 8.
All right, thank you. Terrina?
8.
Nice. Darnell?
9.
I
George?
give it a 10.
All right, I'm a 9. Tyler?
10.
All right, nice. Anybody I missed?
Charmaine,
Charmaine, go.
9.
Nice. Who else?
9 for Mary. I couldn't see the
Nice.
thing on here, but
Nice. All right. We'll keep working on that, you guys. Okay. Thank you so much, Paul and Laurie. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you to you all for being here. And I'm sure this is going to spur a lot of future discussion. So I appreciate you being on. And we're about 6 minutes early, so we're doing great. There you go, Chalmette. I see it. Chalmette is 8 in the chat. Thank you. All right, you guys. That's it.
I could not, Max, I could not download the Google Drive.
So let me work on that, you guys. Let me share that with you, okay? Let me share the drive, and let me make sure that the stuff I have in my drive is the current material from Paul, okay? And then I'll work on sharing that. I put it on my list.
Okay.
Okay.
And also,
All right, guys,
if
thank
we
you.
know more
Oh,
about,
oh,
just quickly,
go, Albrey.
if we want to know more about the actual deal, is there a pitch deck, etc.? I think David kind of briefly asked about it, that we have access to, because I have 2 individuals that probably will take it down themselves.
Yep. Let me get you guys all that. I'll talk to Paul, and I'll get you the right stuff, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Take care, guys.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Happy Friday.
Thank you, Paul. Look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, take care.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Laurie.
Thank you, Max. See you later.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, good to see you, George. Good to see you, Pedro.
Pedro.
All right, bye, you guys.